The stars looked different when you owned them. Admiral Kethavar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, watching the cold light of distant suns through the viewing port. Each point of light represented worlds that belonged to the Zephyrian Empire. Worlds filled with creatures that bowed before Zephyrian might. Soon there would be one more. "Admiral," his second-in-command called out. "The scout reports are ready." Kethavar turned away from the stars and walked to the central command table. A three-dimensional image appeared in the air above it. The image showed a small blue and green world orbiting a yellow star. The planet looked perfect. Oceans of clean water, large land masses covered in green vegetation, clear skies with white, clouds drifting slowly across the surface. "Tell me about this world," Kethavar said. His intelligence officer stepped forward. She was a tall Zephyrian with the purple skin and silver eyes of her species. Like all Zephyrians, she had lived for over 200 years. She had seen many worlds conquered by their empire. "The planet is called Earth by its inhabitants," she began. "The dominant species calls themselves humans. They are a young race, Admiral, very primitive compared to us." The image changed to show cities on the planet's surface. The buildings were small and crude compared to Zephyrian architecture. Roads connected the cities like scars across the landscape. Small flying machines moved through the air above the cities. "How primitive?" Kethavar asked. "They have barely left their home planet, sir. A few small stations orbit their world. Some tiny ships have visited their moon. They have sent unmanned probes to nearby planets, but nothing more. Their technology is at least 500 years behind ours." Kethavar smiled. His sharp teeth gleamed in the bridge's dim light. "Population? 8 billion humans, Admiral. They are spread across all the major land masses. The species seems to breed rapidly and consume resources without much planning." The Admiral walked around the command table, studying the image of Earth from different angles. It truly was a beautiful world. The Zephyrian homeworlds were mostly desert now, drained of resources after thousands of years of civilization. This planet was fresh, untouched by proper development. "What of their military capabilities?" Kethavar asked. The intelligence officer touched a control, and the image changed again. Now it showed crude spacecraft and primitive weapons. "Laughable, sir. Their largest weapons are chemical explosives. They have no energy shields, no plasma cannons, no antimatter drives. Their space vessels use primitive chemical rockets that take months to reach their own moon." Another officer spoke up from his station. "Admiral, the Territorial Council has already classified this world as a Priority 1 acquisition. The High Command wants it claimed for the Empire within the next solar cycle." Kethavar nodded slowly. The Territorial Council was made up of the oldest and wisest Zephyrians in the Empire. If they wanted this world, they had good reasons. Looking at the beautiful planet spinning slowly in the hologram, he could understand why. "The humans will need to be relocated," he said. "Yes, sir. The Council has designated several suitable worlds in the Outer Rim territories. The humans can be transported there after they surrender the planet. And if they refuse to surrender? The Yam." Intelligence officer's silver eyes grew cold. "Then we implement cleansing protocols, Admiral. The planet is more valuable than its current inhabitants." Kethavar had overseen cleansing protocols before. Entire species wiped from existence to make room for Zephyrian expansion. It was unfortunate, but sometimes necessary. The strong survived, and grew stronger. The weak were forgotten. "How long to reach the human world?" he asked. 17 days at maximum warp, sir. The third expeditionary fleet is already assembled and ready for departure." Kethavar looked out at his fleet through the viewing port. 847 warships floated in perfect formation around his flagship, the Void's Dominion. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy entire cities. Together, they could burn the surface of a planet clean in a matter of hours. The largest ships were the dreadnoughts, massive vessels over 2 kilometers long. Their heavy plasma cannons could punch through planetary shields and melt bedrock. The cruisers were smaller but faster, designed to hunt down fleeing enemy ships. The destroyers were the smallest combat vessels, but even they carried more firepower than anything the humans could imagine. "Sir," another officer called out, Long-range sensors show no defensive installations around the human world. No orbital platforms, no shield generators, no weapon satellites. Kethvar was not surprised. Most primitive species never thought to defend their homeworlds until it was too late. They lived their short lives thinking they were safe in the vast emptiness of space. They never imagined that other species might want what they had. "Very well," the Admiral said. "Signal the fleet. We depart for Earth immediately." The bridge crew began their preparations. Throughout the massive fleet, Zephyrian officers gave orders to their subordinates. Engines powered up with deep thrums that echoed through the ship's hulls. Navigation computers calculated the precise course to the human world. Kethvar returned to his position by the viewing port. Soon the stars began to stretch and blur as the fleet entered warp space. The journey to Earth had begun. 17 days later, the fleet dropped out of warp at the edge of the Sol system. Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, just as beautiful as the scout reports had promised. The Admiral ordered his communications officer to open a channel to the planet. The message was simple and direct. Kethvar had given similar ultimatums to dozens of worlds over his long career. "Primitive inhabitants of the world you call Earth, I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your planet has been selected for incorporation into our territory. You have 72 standard time units to evacuate your world completely. Failure to comply will result in the implementation of cleansing protocols. This is your only warning." On Earth, the message was received by every radio, television, and communication satellite on the planet. In command centers and government buildings across the world, humans stared at their screens in shock and disbelief. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in the hastily assembled United Defense Council headquarters, watching the alien message play for the 5th time. She was one of Earth's leading experts on the possibility of extraterrestrial life. For years, she had wondered what humanity's first contact with aliens would be like. She had imagined peaceful meetings, exchanges of knowledge, friendship between species. She had never imagined this. 72 hours, General Marcus Rivera said grimly. They want us to abandon our entire planet in 3 days. Around the conference table, the leaders of Earth's nations looked stunned. Some argued for attempting to negotiate with the aliens. Others suggested trying to hide the population in underground shelters. A few spoke of fighting back, though no one knew how humanity could possibly stand against such a massive alien fleet. Dr. Chen studied the images of the alien ships that Earth's telescopes had captured. They were enormous, clearly built for war. The largest ship was bigger than any city on Earth. Each vessel bristled with unknown weapons that could probably destroy anything humans might send against them. But as she looked at the perfect formations the alien ships maintained, something nagged at her scientific mind. These aliens seemed very confident, almost arrogant. They approached Earth in neat, orderly lines, making no attempt to hide their positions or protect themselves from attack. It was as if they could not imagine that the primitive humans might fight back. That thought gave Dr. Chen a small spark of hope. Throughout history, overconfident enemies had sometimes been defeated by those they underestimated. Perhaps these aliens had made assumptions about humanity that were not entirely accurate. She began to hope that the Zephyrians were about to learn something about the species they had so casually threatened with extinction. 3 hours after the alien ultimatum reached Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen found herself in an elevator descending deeper underground than she had ever been before. General Marcus Rivera stood beside her, his weathered face grim in the elevator's harsh lighting. "They were traveling to a place that officially did not exist, Doctor," the general said quietly. "What I'm about to show you is classified at the highest levels. Only 12 people on Earth know about this facility." The elevator continued its descent for what felt like forever. When it finally stopped, Chen estimated they were at least 2 miles beneath the desert surface. The doors opened to reveal a corridor carved from solid rock, lit by panels that gave off a cold white light. They walked in silence through several security checkpoints. Each one required Rivera to submit to retinal scans, fingerprint analysis, and voice recognition. Armed guards watched them pass with serious expressions. Finally, they reached a massive blast door marked only with the words, "Prometheus Control." Rivera placed his hand on a scanner, and the door began to open with a deep rumbling sound. Beyond the door lay the most incredible sight Dr. Chen had ever seen. The chamber was enormous, carved from the living rock of the mountain above them. Hundreds of technicians worked at computer stations arranged in concentric circles around a central command platform. Giant screens covered the walls, showing star charts, orbital mechanics calculations, and real-time images from all over the solar system. "Welcome to Prometheus Control," Rivera said. "Humanity's insurance policy against exactly what's happening right now." A woman in a military uniform approached them. She was tall and lean, with graying hair and intense blue eyes. Chen recognized her immediately from news broadcasts, though she had never expected to meet her in person. "Dr. Chen, meet Admiral Sarah Voss," Rivera said, "the finest military strategist our species has ever produced." Admiral Voss shook Chen's hand firmly. "Doctor, I've read your papers on xenobiology. We're going to need your expertise to understand these Zephyrians." Chen looked around the incredible facility in amazement. "Admiral, what is this place? How long has it existed?" "Prometheus has been in development for 60 years, Voss replied, leading them toward the central command platform. "It began as a theoretical project during the Cold War. A few far-thinking generals wondered what humanity would do if we faced a threat from space instead of from each other. They reached the command platform, where a three-dimensional display showed the entire solar system. Red dots marked the positions of the Zephyrian fleet near Earth. But Chen gasped when she saw thousands of blue dots scattered throughout the system. Blue dots that represented human installations she had never heard of. "For 6 decades we've been preparing," Admiral Voss continued. "Every space mission, every satellite launch, every deep space probe has served a dual purpose. The public saw scientific exploration and communication satellites. We were building the most extensive defensive network in human history." General Rivera pointed to the display. "Those mining operations on the asteroids, they're weapons platforms, now armed with railguns that can accelerate projectiles to 20% of light speed. The research stations on Jupiter's moons, each one contains enough nuclear warheads to crack a planet." Chen stared at the display in disbelief. "The lunar colonies, the Mars installations, all heavily armed," Voss confirmed. "We've turned our entire solar system into a fortress. Every human settlement beyond Earth is actually a military base disguised as a civilian outpost." A technician approached the command platform. "Admiral, we're receiving detailed scans of the alien fleet. The enemy ships are maintaining standard approach formations. No evasive maneuvers, no defensive positioning." Admiral Voss studied the incoming data with a predator's smile. "They're not even trying to protect themselves. Dr. Chen, in your analysis of their message, what did you conclude about Zephyrian psychology?" Chen thought carefully before answering. "They seem supremely confident, almost arrogant. The way they delivered their ultimatum suggested they've never faced serious resistance before. They expect immediate surrender." "Exactly. These aliens have been conquering primitive worlds for so long they've forgotten how to fight an actual war. Look at their formation." The display zoomed in on the Zephyrian fleet. The ships moved in perfect lines, with the largest vessels at the front and smaller ships arranged symmetrically behind them. "Beautiful to look at," Admiral Voss said. "Completely useless in combat. They're arranged for maximum intimidation factor, not tactical advantage. Their big ships are exposing their flanks to attack, and they've clustered their support vessels where a single strike could take out dozens of them." General Rivera activated another section of the display. "Dr. Chen, you need to understand what humanity has really been doing for the past 60 years. While we appeared to be stumbling around our solar system with primitive chemical rockets, we were actually studying every aspect of space warfare." The display showed technical specifications that made Chen's head spin. Fusion-powered spacecraft with acceleration capabilities that defied everything she knew about human technology. Weapon systems that seemed like science fiction. Defensive installations hidden throughout the solar system. "Every war humanity has ever fought taught us something," Rivera continued. "We learned about strategy from Alexander the Great, about logistics from Napoleon, about industrial warfare from both world wars. We studied guerrilla tactics from Vietnam and Afghanistan. We analyzed every military success and failure in human history. But this is space combat, Chen protested. How can Earth military history help against aliens with superior technology? Admiral Voss laughed grimly. Doctor, technology doesn't win wars. Strategy wins wars. Creativity wins wars. The willingness to do whatever it takes to protect your home wins wars. She gestured to the display showing the Zephyrian fleet. These aliens have better individual ships than we do. Their weapons are more powerful. Their defenses are stronger. But they think like predators who have never faced real prey. They expect their enemies to run or submit when faced with overwhelming force. What they don't understand, Rivera added, is that humans are different. We've spent our entire evolutionary history fighting each other. We've perfected the art of killing our own species. We know every dirty trick, every underhanded tactic, every way to turn weakness into strength. A new alarm sounded throughout the command center. A technician called out, "Admiral, the enemy fleet is beginning to charge their weapons. They appear to be preparing for a demonstration of firepower." Admiral Voss turned to Dr. Chen with a cold smile. "Doctor, you're about to witness something no alien species has ever seen before. You're about to watch humanity at war." She walked to the central command station and placed her hand on a large red switch protected by a clear cover. For 60 years we've prepared for this moment. Every human who worked on the Prometheus project knew this day might come. Every sacrifice, every secret, every hidden installation was built for one purpose. The Admiral lifted the cover and looked directly at Chen. The Zephyrians wanted our world for themselves. They threatened to murder every person on Earth if we didn't abandon our home. They made one fatal mistake, Doctor. What mistake? Chen whispered. They forgot that humans don't run from fights. We run toward them. Admiral Voss pressed the switch. Throughout the solar system, hidden installations that had masqueraded as mining operations and research stations for decades suddenly revealed their true purpose. Weapon systems that had been carefully concealed and camouflaged came online. The asteroid belt, which the Zephyrians had dismissed as empty space debris, began to move as thousands of hollowed-out rocks activated their hidden propulsion systems. On the command center's main screen, Dr. Chen watched the blue dots representing human positions begin to converge on the red dots of the alien fleet. For the first time since the ultimatum arrived, she began to believe humanity might survive. The Zephyrians were about to discover that they had not threatened a primitive, defenseless species. They had threatened the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever produced. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of the Void's dominion, expecting to receive a message of surrender from the primitive humans. Instead, his communication officer looked up from her station with confusion. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet." "Excellent," Kethvar said. "Put it on the main screen. Let us see how these humans beg for mercy." The image that appeared surprised him. Instead of a cowering primitive, he saw a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. She looked directly into the camera with steady eyes that showed no fear. "This is Admiral Sarah Voss of the Terran Defense Force," the human said calmly. "You have entered our star system uninvited and threatened our home. You have 10 minutes to reverse course, or we will consider your fleet hostile and respond." Accordingly, the bridge fell silent for a moment. Then Kethvar began to laugh. Soon his entire crew was laughing with him. The primitive human thought she could threaten the third expeditionary fleet of the Zephyrian Empire. "Did she just threaten us?" his second-in-command asked between fits of laughter. "It appears so," Kethvar replied, wiping tears from his silver eyes. "How amusing. These creatures actually believe they can fight us," his weapons officer spoke up. "Admiral, should I prepare the planetary bombardment systems? A demonstration of our firepower might convince them to be more reasonable." "Yes," Kethvar said. "Charge the primary plasma arrays. Target an uninhabited area of their largest continent. Show them what Zephyrian weapons can do." As the crew began preparations for the demonstration, Kethvar felt a familiar satisfaction. This was how every conquest began. The primitives would see the power of his weapons and immediately surrender. Then the efficient work of relocating the population could begin. But as he watched his tactical display, something began to trouble him. "Sensors, officer," he called out. "What are those energy readings throughout the system?" The young Zephyrian at the sensor station frowned at her displays. "I'm not certain, sir. There appear to be artificial energy signatures scattered throughout the system, much stronger than what we detected during our initial scout missions. Could the humans have built new installations since our scouts were here? That seems unlikely. Admiral, the energy signatures are massive, suggesting construction that would have taken decades. But our scouts reported no major installations beyond the immediate vicinity of their home planet." Kethvar felt the first stirring of unease. "Show me a tactical display of the entire system." The main screen changed to show a three-dimensional map of the human solar system. Red markers indicated the positions of Kethvar's fleet near Earth, but scattered throughout the system were hundreds of blue markers that definitely had not been in the original scout reports. "What am I looking at?" Kethvar demanded. His intelligence officer studied the display with growing alarm. "Sir, those blue markers represent artificial structures with significant energy output. They appear to be positioned on asteroids, moons, and artificial platforms throughout the system." The sensors officer looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Admiral, I'm reading massive power buildups from multiple locations. Whatever those installations are, they're charging weapons." Before Kethvar could respond, space around his fleet suddenly came alive with movement. Objects that had appeared to be drifting asteroids began changing course, revealing themselves as artificial constructs. Energy signatures blazed to life throughout the system as hidden installations revealed themselves. "Evasive maneuvers," Kethvar shouted, but his words came too late. The first kinetic impactor struck the heavy cruiser Stellar Destroyer at 20% of light speed. The chunk of dense metal, no larger than a ground vehicle, hit the ship's forward section with the force of a nuclear explosion. The cruiser's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, were useless against solid matter moving at relativistic speed. The ship simply disintegrated. More impactors followed, launched from installations throughout the outer system. They had been fired hours earlier, accelerated to incredible speeds by railguns hidden in what the Zephyrians had assumed were primitive mining operations. "Shields!" Kethvar commanded, but his crew was already working frantically at their stations. "Sir, the shields are useless. These projectiles are moving too fast for our deflector arrays to stop." Another cruiser exploded as a kinetic round punched through its hull like paper. Then another. The beautiful formation of the Third Expeditionary Fleet began to dissolve as ships tried desperately to avoid the incoming projectiles. "Return fire," Kethvar ordered. "Target those installations." His weapons officer shook her head. "Sir, the enemy positions are scattered across the entire system. Some are on the far side of the system's star. Others are hidden among asteroid fields. We can't target them all." The tactical display showed the true scope of the trap the humans had laid. What had appeared to be a primitive species clinging to a single planet was revealed as a sophisticated civilization that had weaponized their entire solar system. "How did our scouts miss this?" Kethvar demanded. His intelligence officer was studying the sensor data with growing horror. "Sir, I believe the humans deliberately concealed their true capabilities. These installations were disguised to look like civilian mining operations and research stations. Our scouts saw what the humans wanted them to see." More ships died as the kinetic bombardment continued. The weapons platforms hidden throughout the system had been firing in sequence, creating a continuous rain of projectiles that the Zephyrian fleet could neither dodge nor stop. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from multiple sources throughout the system." "Put it through," Kethvar said grimly. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and professional, but it carried an undertone of deadly promise that made Kethvar's blood run cold. "Zephyrian fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Voss. You are now within range of our outer defensive perimeter. The projectiles currently destroying your ships were fired 3 hours ago from installations in the outer system. You have approximately 4 minutes before the next wave arrives." The transmission continued with technical precision that horrified the Zephyrian admiral. "You are facing kinetic impactors with masses ranging from 5 to 50 metric tons. traveling at velocities between 15 and 25% of light speed. Your energy shields cannot stop them. Your armor cannot deflect them. Your point defense systems cannot target them. Kethavar looked at his tactical display and saw the truth in the human's words. More projectiles were indeed incoming, spread across multiple vectors that would make evasion impossible. You have one opportunity to withdraw your fleet beyond our defensive perimeter, the human admiral continued. If you remain within our system, we will interpret that as an act of war and respond with the full force of the Terran Defense Network. For the first time in his long military career, Kethavar felt genuine fear. These were not the primitives his scouts had described. These were creatures who had spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario. "Sir," his navigation officer called out, "if we reverse course now, we can retreat beyond the range of their weapons." Kethavar looked at the main screen, where Earth hung in space like a blue jewel. His empire had ordered him to claim this world. The High Command expected victory, not retreat from primitives. But as another cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash of light, the admiral realized he faced a choice between his pride and his fleet. "All ships reverse course," he ordered. "Full retreat to safe distance." The Zephyrian fleet began to turn away from Earth, their perfect formation replaced by desperate flight. But as they fled, Kethavar studied the tactical display and realized something that filled him with dread. The humans had let them approach within range of their weapons before revealing their true capabilities. They had allowed the Zephyrians to see exactly what they wanted to see until it was too late to avoid the trap. These creatures did not think like any species he had ever encountered. They thought like predators who had spent millennia perfecting the art of killing. And now they knew exactly where his fleet was. Admiral Kethavar thought his fleet had reached safety at the edge of the human solar system. His ships had pulled back beyond the range of those terrifying kinetic weapons, and for a moment, he allowed himself to believe the worst was over. He was wrong. "Admiral," his sensors officer called out with alarm in her voice, "I'm detecting massive movement throughout the asteroid belt." On the tactical display, thousands of objects that had appeared to be ordinary space rocks suddenly came to life. Each asteroid began changing course, revealing hidden propulsion systems and weapon arrays. The humans had not simply built installations on existing asteroids. They had hollowed out thousands of them and turned the entire asteroid belt into a weapon. "Impossible," Kethavar whispered. "The energy requirements alone." His intelligence officer was frantically analyzing the new data. "Sir, each of those asteroids contains fusion power plants and maneuvering thrusters. The humans have effectively created the largest minefield in galactic history." The weaponized asteroids began moving toward the Zephyrian fleet in coordinated waves. Unlike the earlier kinetic bombardment, these were not simple projectiles. They were guided weapons, each one capable of tracking and pursuing individual targets. "Evasive maneuvers," Kethavar ordered. "All ships scatter formation." But even as his fleet tried to disperse, more surprises revealed themselves. What had appeared to be empty space suddenly filled with ships as the human fleet decloaked. Hundreds of vessels materialized around the Zephyrian formation, each one smaller than the alien warships but bristling with weapons. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant, one of humanity's stealth dreadnoughts. His ship had been built inside a hollowed-out asteroid over the past 20 years, its true nature hidden from any casual observer. Now, as it shed its rocky disguise, the Defiant revealed itself as a vessel designed specifically for killing much larger enemies. "Target acquired," his weapons officer reported. "Enemy dreadnought bearing 270. "Fire," Morrison ordered simply. The Defiant's main weapon was not a conventional energy beam or projectile system. It was a focused antimatter stream, a weapon that human scientists had spent decades perfecting in secret. The beam struck the Zephyrian dreadnought's shields and simply erased them, continuing on to tear a hole through the massive ship's hull. Throughout the human fleet, similar weapons opened fire. The Zephyrians had superior technology in many ways, but they had never faced weapons designed specifically to counter their defensive systems. Human engineers had studied captured alien technology for years, learning every weakness and vulnerability. Admiral Voss watched the battle from Prometheus Control, deep beneath Earth's surface. Around her, hundreds of technicians coordinated the most complex military operation in human history. "Status report," she called out. "Phase 1 complete, Admiral. The enemy has lost 47 ships to the kinetic bombardment. Phase 2 is now engaging. Our stealth fleet has achieved complete tactical surprise." On the main display, Dr. Chen watched in amazement as the battle unfolded. The human ships moved like a pack of wolves, coordinating their attacks to overwhelm individual Zephyrian vessels. Where the aliens had expected to face primitive chemical rockets, they instead found sophisticated spacecraft with capabilities that matched or exceeded their own. "How did we build all of this without anyone noticing?" Chen asked. General Rivera answered from his station. "Compartmentalization, Doctor. Each component was built separately and appeared to serve civilian purposes. The fusion reactors were supposedly for deep space research. The antimatter production facilities were disguised as physics experiments. The weapon systems were developed as asteroid mining equipment." Another wave of human attacks struck the Zephyrian fleet. This time the weapons were different again. Massive orbital mirrors positioned throughout the solar system began focusing sunlight into concentrated beams. The star that gave life to Earth became a weapon, as streams of focused solar energy lanced across space to strike the alien ships. Admiral Kethavar watched in horror as his fleet was systematically destroyed by tactics he had never imagined. These humans fought like no species he had ever encountered. They used gravity wells as weapons, turning their own space stations into guided missiles. They employed swarm tactics with hundreds of smaller ships overwhelming his larger vessels. Worst of all, they seemed to anticipate every move his fleet made. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "How do they know our tactics better than we do?" His intelligence officer had been analyzing the human attack patterns. "Sir, I believe they have studied our military doctrine extensively. Every maneuver we attempt, they have a counter prepared. It's as if they have been preparing for this specific battle for decades." She was more right than she knew. In deep bunkers on Earth, human strategists had spent 60 years studying every aspect of alien psychology and tactics that could be gleaned from intercepted communications and careful observation. They had war-gamed thousands of scenarios, preparing for every possible approach an alien force might take. The battle entered its third phase as weapons platforms hidden on the moons of the outer planets came online. Jupiter's moon Europa revealed massive railgun installations beneath its icy surface. Saturn's moon Titan opened concealed missile silos. Even the planet Mars itself began launching attack craft that had been hidden in artificial caverns. Captain Morrison's Defiant led a coordinated assault on the Void's Dominion, Admiral Kethavar's flagship. The human captain had studied the design of Zephyrian command ships extensively, learning their weaknesses through years of intelligence gathering. "Target their communication arrays first," Morrison ordered. "Cut off their ability to coordinate their remaining ships." The Defiant's weapons struck with surgical precision, destroying the command ship's ability to communicate with the rest of the fleet. Other human vessels followed up, targeting the ship's weapon systems and propulsion. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Kethavar realized that his fleet was not just losing the battle. They were being systematically dismantled by an enemy that understood warfare on a level he had never imagined. "Sir," his communications officer said desperately, "I'm detecting human boarding craft approaching our position." Kethavar felt a chill of absolute terror. The humans were not content to simply destroy his ships from a distance. They intended to board and capture them. The first human Marines cut through the hull of the Void's Dominion, using weapons that sliced through advanced alien alloys like paper. What came through the breach were not the primitive savages the Zephyrians had expected, but professional soldiers equipped with technology that seemed impossible for such a young species. The human soldiers moved through the ship's corridors with lethal efficiency. They knew the layout of Zephyrian vessels better than some of the alien crew members. They had studied the ship's designs, learned the locations of critical systems, and planned their assault routes in advance. More importantly, they brought with them weapons designed specifically for close combat against Zephyrian physiology. Every advantage the aliens thought they possessed was neutralized by human preparation and ingenuity. As reports of boarding actions came in from throughout his fleet, Admiral Kethvar finally understood the true scope of his mistake. The humans had not simply built weapons to fight in space. They had prepared for every aspect of warfare, from massive fleet engagements down to hand-to-hand combat in ship corridors. These creatures had turned the entire art of war into a science, and they had been studying for a very long time. On his tactical display, the Admiral watched as ship after ship went dark. Some were destroyed outright, others were boarded and captured. A few managed to flee, but they were pursued by human vessels that seemed to know exactly where they would go. For the first time in Zephyrian history, one of their fleets was not just defeated, it was being completely annihilated by creatures they had dismissed as primitive animals, and the humans were not done yet. The end began when Admiral Voss activated humanity's ultimate weapon. Deep in the Prometheus control center, she stood before a console that had been built 50 years earlier, but never used. The engineers who designed it had hoped it would never be necessary. But as the Zephyrian fleet attempted to regroup at the edge of the solar system, Voss knew the time had come to show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. "Admiral," Dr. Chen said quietly. "What is that?" Voss looked at the scientist with eyes that had seen too much war. "Doctor, for half a century, humanity has been secretly producing antimatter at facilities throughout the solar system. What you're looking at is the control system for the largest antimatter arsenal ever assembled." The console showed the locations of antimatter production facilities hidden throughout the solar system. Disguised as research stations and deep space observatories, each installation had been slowly accumulating antimatter for decades. Together, they represented enough destructive power to sterilize entire star systems. "The yield?" General Rivera asked. "Equivalent to approximately 1 billion nuclear warheads," Voss replied calmly. "Distributed across 437 warheads positioned throughout the system." Admiral Kethvar had managed to rally the surviving ships of his fleet at what he believed was a safe distance from the human weapons. Of his original 847 vessels, fewer than 200 remained operational. The rest had been destroyed or captured by the relentless human assault. "Sir," his communications officer said, "I'm receiving a transmission from the human planet." "Put it through," Kethvar ordered wearily. The image that appeared on his screen was not Admiral Voss this time, but a human male in military uniform. His face was weathered and scarred, the face of someone who had seen combat up close. "This is General Marcus Rivera of the Terran Defense Force," the human said. "Admiral Kethvar, you came to our system with orders to commit genocide. You threatened to murder every man, woman, and child on our planet. You have lost the right to mercy." Kethvar tried to respond, but the human continued speaking. "Your fleet will be completely destroyed. No Zephyrian vessel will leave this system alive. No word of your defeat will reach your empire. Your high command will wait for reports that will never come, wondering what happened to their mighty Third Expeditionary Fleet." The general's voice carried a coldness that made Kethvar's blood freeze. "You wanted Earth for yourselves. You are about to learn that some things are worth dying for, and humans will kill to protect them." The transmission ended, and Kethvar was left staring at a blank screen. "Sir," his sensors officer called out urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system. The readings are off our scales." On the tactical display, energy signatures blazed to life at hundreds of locations throughout the solar system. Each signature represented an antimatter warhead beginning its final activation sequence. The first warhead detonated near Jupiter, creating a brief second sun as matter and antimatter annihilated each other in perfect efficiency. The explosion was visible from Earth as a point of brilliant white light that outshone everything in the sky. More warheads followed in carefully timed sequence. Each explosion was positioned to catch fleeing Zephyrian ships in overlapping fields of destruction. The aliens' energy shields, designed to deflect conventional weapons, were useless against the fundamental forces of matter-antimatter annihilation. Captain Morrison watched from the bridge of the Defiant as the Zephyrian cruiser Stellar Hammer tried desperately to escape the expanding sphere of destruction from an antimatter detonation. The ship's engines were at maximum power, But physics was unforgiving. The explosion caught the vessel and simply erased it from existence. "My God," Morrison whispered. "We're not just winning, we're completely obliterating them." Throughout the solar system, the antimatter warheads continued their deadly work. Ships that had survived the earlier phases of the battle found themselves trapped in a web of destruction with no possibility of escape. The humans had calculated the timing and positioning of each detonation with mathematical precision. Admiral Kethvar realized that his flagship, the mighty Void's Dominion, was directly in the path of 3 converging antimatter explosions. There was no time to escape, no way to avoid the inevitable. In his final moments, the Zephyrian admiral understood something that would have horrified his empire's leadership. Humanity had not simply built weapons to defend their world. They had created a military philosophy based on the complete and total destruction of any threat to their survival. These creatures did not fight to win battles. They fought to eliminate enemies so thoroughly that the threat could never return. The Void's Dominion disappeared in a flash of pure energy, as antimatter warheads detonated around it. Admiral Kethvar and his crew became part of the expanding plasma clouds that had once been the pride of the Zephyrian Empire. Dr. Chen watched the destruction from Prometheus control with a mixture of awe and horror. On the main display, red markers representing Zephyrian ships disappeared one by one until none remained. The entire 3rd Expeditionary Fleet had been wiped from existence. "Casualty report," Admiral Voss requested. A technician called out from his station. "Human casualties, 17 wounded, 0 killed. Enemy casualties, 847 ships destroyed. Estimated crew losses over 4 million. The control center fell silent as the magnitude of the victory sank in. Humanity had faced the most powerful military force the Zephyrian Empire could send, and had destroyed it completely while suffering virtually no losses. "Admiral," Dr. Chen said quietly, "what happens now? When the Zephyrian Empire realizes their fleet has vanished, they'll send more ships." Voss smiled grimly and gestured to another section of the display. "Doctor, what you witnessed today was just our defensive capability. Allow me to show you what we've prepared for offensive operations." New images appeared on the screens around the control center. Massive shipyards hidden in the asteroid belt revealed themselves, showing construction facilities that had been building attack fleets for decades. Hundreds of human warships, each designed from captured Zephyrian technology, but improved with human innovation, prepared to launch. "The Zephyrian Empire sent a fleet to take our world," Admiral Voss said. "They're about to discover that we're coming to take theirs." General Rivera activated his communications console and sent a message that would be transmitted throughout human space. "All units, this is General Rivera. Operation Prometheus is complete. Enemy fleet eliminated with 0 human casualties. All ships are to prepare for Phase 2 operations." He turned to Dr. Chen with a predator's smile. "Doctor, for 60 years, we've been preparing to defend Earth, but we've also been preparing for the possibility that defense wouldn't be enough." On the main display, star charts showed the locations of Zephyrian worlds throughout their empire. Each world was marked with detailed intelligence gathered over decades of careful observation. The Zephyrians wanted to commit genocide against humanity, Rivera continued. "They threatened to wipe out our entire species to take our planet. They made a fatal error in judgment." "What error?" Chen asked, though she was beginning to understand. "They assumed we would fight like prey animals, trying only to escape or hide. They never imagined that we might fight like humans." Admiral Voss activated the launch sequences for humanity's hidden attack fleets. Throughout the solar system, ships that had been constructed in secret began powering up their engines. Each vessel carried weapons designed specifically to counter Zephyrian defenses, crewed by humans who had spent their entire lives preparing for interstellar warfare. "The galaxy is about to learn something new," Voss said as the first human ships began their journey towards Zephyrian space. "It's about to learn that humanity doesn't just fight to survive. We fight to win completely." 6 months later, intercepted. Communications from the Zephyrian Empire spoke of entire fleets vanishing without trace, of worlds going silent, of an enemy that struck without warning and left no survivors to report what had happened. The Zephyrian High Command issued desperate orders for all ships to avoid the area of space where Earth was located. They declared the human solar system to be a forbidden zone, too dangerous for any vessel to approach. But by then, it was far too late. Humanity had gone to war, and the galaxy would never be the same. Final tally: 847 Zephyrian warships destroyed, 4 million alien casualties, human losses, 0 deaths. The species that had wanted Earth for themselves had learned the most important lesson in the universe: never threaten humanity's home.